$150 right now. The stock's at 119 with a gain of 4.5%. And that pounding the table, reverberating through nearly the entire semiconductor sector as witnessed by the SOX, the ETF that holds a bunch of them. The SOX could use help. It's had a rocky start to the second quarter. I mean, let me pull out some key names in the sector that are doing really well today. Super Microcomputer. Nice gain of 5.5%. ARM Holdings, which reports quarterly numbers this week. I think it's Thursday after the bell, up 4.6%. And Advanced Micro Devices up 2.5%. No pop, just drop for Apple shares. The stock is losing about 1.25%, second worst performer on the Dow, after self-professed Apple fan Warren Buffett revealed at his annual shareholder weekend meeting that he chopped some of his huge stake for the second straight quarter. Berkshire sold 13%, or about 115 million of its 915 million shares of Apple. Right now, the stock is struggling intraday here. Speaking of Berkshire, the Buffett-run conglomerate, often seen as a proxy for U.S. economy because its 70-plus businesses reflect just about every single sector, with shares up 0.2% after the company reported blowout first quarter operating profits of $11.2 billion. That's a record, by the way. Berkshire is looked at as sort of that proxy for the economy because it has everything from industrials to home building, lending to jewelry to car dealerships under its wings. So the question is, what do its earnings and Buffett's move to sell Apple stock say about the near-term economy and the overall stock market? Let's get right to the floor show. Joining me now, J.P. Morgan chief U.S. economist Michael Feroli and Bullseye option chief market strategist Alan Nuckman. Michael, not all, but a very large number of Berkshire businesses showed real growth and strength during the quarter, from the high-end NetJets and Borsheims jewelry to what people most can afford, Dairy Queen, Benjamin Moore paint, See's chocolates. You know, how valuable is Berkshire as a temperature gauge of the whole economy?
Well, look, I think we know that the data through April looked pretty solid for this year. Granted, we had a bit of a softer number for jobs in April, but that being said, we've also seen retail spending generally pretty solid, final sales in the economy pretty solid. So it's not surprising with that sort of backdrop. And of course, nominal GDP even stronger. So it's not surprising with that sort of backdrop that company profits are doing well.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of housing-related companies, Michael, among them Acme Brick. Again, you could look at Benjamin Moore Paint as one of those, and so many more. He does home lending. There was news out of the home ownership, or at least dream of home ownership world, with the New York Federal Reserve today. I found it really upsetting. Most people believe that home ownership is not going to happen in their lifetime. They just will rent for the rest of their lives. If you look at the home builder stocks today, they're doing gangbusters, probably because that means prices continue to go up. But how do you view that as a problem for the economy, or not?
I think it's a long-run structural problem that we have an undersupply of housing and have had for much of the past decade. You know, more recently, some of that reflects higher mortgage rates, of course, but it's not just mortgage rates, right? The actual construction cost of housing has gone up pretty significantly over the past few years, as have land prices. And so you really haven't seen, even with pretty strong housing start numbers, you really haven't seen any move up in vacancy rates in the housing sector. So, you know, bad time. That, you know, it's bad news for potential home buyers or wannabe home buyers, but it's definitely good news for home suppliers, including some of the names you mentioned.
Alan, one thing for sure, Buffett and Berkshire have a massive stock portfolio. And if you look at some of the stocks in here, I mean, everything from Bank of America to Coca-Cola. Obviously, Apple is the largest holding in this. Amex, Occidental, DaVita. It spans the gamut, right? But the trimming of his Apple stake grabbed a lot of attention. People wondered, well, if you love it so much, why are you doing it? Here is what he said.
We own American Express, which is a wonderful business. We own Coca-Cola, which is a wonderful business. And we own Apple, which is an even better business. We will have Apple as our largest investment. But I don't mind at all, under current conditions, building the cash position. I think when I look at the alternative of what's available in the equity markets, and I look at the composition of what's going on in the world.
Yeah, he said he doesn't mind building cash, meaning he sold Apple to do that. Is that worrisome at all that he chose Apple to sell it? I mean, granted, he's made so much money. I think when he bought it, it was anywhere from 35 to 45 bucks. Right now, as you see, it's 181.
Right. He's getting 5%. I mean, he's getting 5% on his billions in cash. So that's a lot of math right there. The Apple, like you said, he's never going to pick the top in the market, but I think his timing, and again, who am I to question his timing? His timing is infinite, whereas I'm a trader, I have to time things.
Yeah.
His timing in Apple, the fact is it's set this bottom base and it's had this reversal, just like Tesla did. There were two stocks that have not participated in this rally, but those stocks have had a sentiment shift and also a price pop. And what we've seen in the stock market in general, that we've seen this every time there's been a sell-off. We had a 5% pullback in the S&P. The S&P has only been below 5,000 one day since February 22nd. But we've seen a dip and rip, and it looks like we're set up for new all-time highs once again after getting above the halfway point of this drop from the top.
A dip and a rip when we haven't even seen anything more than a 5%. I guess
right.
You can't even call that
Exactly.
a correction. But Michael, well, let's bring it back to the economy, which if it weakens even more, and it's barely weak at the moment. I mean, we did get the jobs number for April, and it was slightly softer than expected. So people thought, oh, that'll make the Federal Reserve more inclined to cut rates instead of holding off. Do you believe that? And by the way, the unemployment rate did tick up to about 3.9%. But then, this is the far right here that you can see. At what level would it have to hit for the Fed to say, oh, okay, now let's cut rates?
Yeah, I don't think last Friday's number was enough, but I think that was, let's say, a move in the direction that would eventually get the Fed cutting perhaps later this summer. 3.9% unemployment is still pretty low.
Yeah.
I think if that
40
gets...
40 or lows, 50.
Yeah. So I think if we, but if we're up still a half point from the lows of 3.4% a year ago, if that moves up, a little above 4%, and we continue to see some of those job numbers slow, then I think the Fed probably would get a little comfortable, going back to the plan from late last year to start adjusting rates lower. But as I said, last Friday was only a first step in that direction. You'd probably like to see the CPIs over the next 2 or 3 CPIs come in a little softer than what we saw in the first quarter, and to see those job numbers really cement that moderation that we got an early hint of last Friday.
Yep, and as usual, we're in the position of waiting for new inflation data. Michael, Alan, great to see you both. Thank you for weighing in. Dow up 94 points. New York Federal Reserve Bank President John